everyone, Barbara Rankin here today with another video tutorial for ColourArte. Today I'm going to try a bit of a different technique to add colors to this egg-shaped ornament from ColourArte. They are very high quality glass. Even the opening is smooth and won't cut your fingers. And ColourArte also sells these in a heart shape and a star shape. Now I'm sure you've seen some of the beautiful acrylic pours done by many artists. But if you're like me and sometimes have trouble with pouring and mixing the proper amounts of ingredients and so on, then this technique may be just for you. I'm going to be mixing my primary elements with Golden's polymer medium gloss. It is a bit thicker than the pouring medium, so I'm hoping that will give me a consistency that will move but not necessarily run down the glass ornament. And I went ahead and transferred the polymer medium from this jar to this condiment type of bottle because it has a small tip and you can control how much you want to put out, and it has a nice cap to keep your medium fresh and from drying out. Now it's important to get everything ready before you start. I have a piece of parchment paper here, the kind used for baking, and underneath that I have a piece of aluminum foil because I'm not sure if the parchment paper will hold up to the liquid. You are also going to need a straw. Since these ornaments are handmade, I have found that the openings vary in size, but you want it to fit tightly so the ornament does not wobble around while you're working on it. This straw is slightly larger than the hole, but you can bend it enough to insert it, and it is better to have it too tight than too loose. And you can just continue to work it in, and it's a good idea to try and get it all the way to the top because the more you have in there, the less likely it's going to wobble around, and that will be very distracting for you. Just keep working it, and there you see it's nice and sturdy. You will also need a spatula, a paintbrush, a glass of water, your polymer medium, of course, and your primary elements, even more, of course, and a cardboard stand of some sort, like packing material or even an old shipping box to stand your ornament in to let dry. To do that, all you need to do is cut an X into the cardboard, just large enough to hold the straw without it falling over. And you can do that before you get to that point because you want to make sure that this doesn't just tip over after you've done all that work. And once you determine that it's not going to tip over, then you're ready to start, because once you start, you will not be able to stop. So have everything you need handy. And here's a little tip that I have for you. If you're not sure about what colors you want to use, it's a good idea to do a little sample of each. Some of them, as you can see, don't look anything like what they look in the jar. For instance, the Sunset Glow has a more coppery undertone. The sea glass looks like I see an opalescent kind of almost white color coming through. And then, of course, the Summer Breeze looks like it has more green in it. And I think these two are pretty similar. This one is not quite as dark as it appears in the jar, but that could be due to the amount of pigment I put in that little sample. So I'm thinking that I might want to use the Pear Blossom, the Summer Breeze, and the Apple Blossom for my ornament, and I do like the sea glass as well. So I'm going to think on it for a minute. When I come back, I'll start putting it all together. So I've decided to use the sea glass, the Pear Blossom, the Summer Breeze, and the Apple Blossom, which I have sitting here off to the side. I will make puddles of the gloss medium and add the pigments to each puddle using my brush to mix them. I'll go ahead and mix these in fast forward so you get the idea without too much boredom. I poured a puddle of gloss medium for each color and dipped the end of my paintbrush into each pot to pick up the pigment. Then I used a wet paintbrush to mix each puddle. Just a little water on the brush helps thin it ever so slightly. I also rinse my brush between mixing the colors, even though they will be mixed together on the ornament. Now the fun begins. I began by dipping the ornament into the puddles, twisting and turning the ornament to pick up each color. When the puddles started to get too thin, I used my spatula to push the color into a smaller area, which made it easier to pick the paint up with the ornament. At this point, I'm still trying to keep the colors separate. However, soon the colors start to marbleize with each other, and it's now only necessary for me to pick up the color puddles with the spatula and just pat the paint onto the ornament and fill in any areas that have no paint at all. As you can see, I'm still dipping, spinning, and dabbing the paint wherever it is needed. As I get closer to the neck of the ornament, I simply place my hand beneath the paper to get the paint up around the neck and opening of the ornament. The paint is still running, so I started to gently spin the ornament to keep the paint moving until I was comfortable placing it in the cardboard packaging holder that I had made. And here I'm just touching up any areas that look like they need more paint. Now I'm just sort of spinning it around to see if there are any places that need a touch up with paint. I've got some paint on my gloves there. You can use a torch to get rid of any air bubbles that may develop. I can't stress enough to you, though, that you need to be very careful anytime you use any kind of heat tool. You want to keep it away from the paint, and remember it will heat up the glass ornament, so do not touch the ornament until it cools off. Also, you don't want to set the cardboard holder on fire either, so please be very careful when using your heat tools. Okay, I wanted to show you that this has sat overnight and it's now nice and dry. And however, this side came out pretty smooth, a smooth transition between colors. But here looks like I've got some drips here. So what I thought I would do is remove it from the packaging. Try to do, I think, see if I can try and give you a good look at this. It's looking pretty cool. You can actually see through it a little bit, and there's some transparency. here. So I'm going to sit it on the side that needs the most mending, if you will. And I've gone ahead and mixed up some colors. And now what I want to do is scrape these colors up and place them in this tiny cup. It's such a small amount on my palette, but I don't need much at this point. You can see in the cup, I've got the different colors there. Okay, let me bring my packaging back over here, and I'm just going to pour a very small amount along that dried drip line. And then I'm just going to use my finger to blend it in to make it all even. You don't want to pour too much paint out or it will be harder to control the dripping again. You want just enough paint to spread with your finger without so much remaining that it has nowhere to go but down. And you can see that I'm using a patting motion so that I can sort of control that leveling of the paint because it will level itself. And I just continued adding this color combination around the entire ornament and doing this patting motion. And occasionally you can see me using a spreading motion with my finger. And I was doing that in order to try to keep the level of the polymer medium paint mixture evenly distributed as I worked across the ornament. I'm going to leave this in just slightly faster than real time so that you can see the process as I work along, and the colors that come up, I'll ultimately cover most of them and then kind of work them off. But it's just experimental for me, and I'm also thinking that I would prefer to have a more even coloration around the entire ornament rather than the pop of pink and a separate pop of yellow or green or pink. So I'm using that this opportunity to try to even that color out, and I'm spritzing, or actually I'm misting the ornament with a mister. You can just barely see it off camera, but I couldn't hold it too close because I really didn't want to saturate the ornament with the water and make it too runny. I wanted just enough to allow it to run and become a little more transparent, and it allows the color beneath to show through. And while it's still dripping, I'm just kind of holding it and spinning it around and watching the drips form so that if I don't like something, I can go in and dab it. That's really pretty. But I've decided to use a little more color in some areas, and so I'm just adding a little bit more of the paint from the cup. And I found that by using this dabbing motion, it allowed me to do a bit of blending and spreading the paint all at the same time, and it would sort of level itself really nicely. I continued to mist it with water, continually turning it to watch the process and control any drips that may develop while the paint is still wet. I also liked some of the dribbles that were forming, but if you don't like that, you can dab them away. Then it dawned on me to use my heat tool to try to dry the watery paint and control or stop the dripping. Again, be very careful using your heat tool because it will heat the glass and it can burn you. I mostly warmed the bottom half so I could put the ornament in the holder and then heat the top portion without having to handle it. I'm also thinking that if I can get this bottom portion dried, I'll be able to sit it on my packaging here, and then I can continue to work and heat the top half of it and not have my hand anywhere near the heat tool. And now I'm also able to do a little bit of touch up that I see along the sides. And same process, just using my finger to dab the paint on in those areas. I'll come back and use my mister to just add a tiny mist of water on it to let it smooth out, and then again drying it with my heat tool. Okay, and now I wanted to bring back some more of that pretty pink color, and so I mixed up a little bit more of the polymer medium and the apple blossom right on my palette, and I just used my finger and dabbed it on where I wanted it. Spritzed a little water on it, very little, and then dried it as I worked along until I liked the look. Okay, let me show you what it looks like with the little bit of pink popping through, just enough. And I did notice that it was there was some cracking, I think it's called crazing, going on, but it's probably due to my spritzing it with water and then drying it with the heat tool. But I really like that look. So I've decided to add more cracks to the egg, and I'm doing that with black archival ink and a crackle stamp from Kaisercraft. Just simply stamp the small portions of the image all over the ornament, leaving spaces between the stamped image. And you want to use an archival ink for this step so that when you seal the ornament with a water-based varnish or sealer, the ink won't run. So now that everything is dry, I've put the ornament back onto my stand, and I'm going to seal it with a coat of triple thick brush-on gloss glaze. I'm using a soft brush to do this, and this is a really nice product. It is self-leveling and very easy to use. I did watch for a bit to catch any drips that might develop, and a few drips did develop, and I was still able to gently brush them away. So now just set it aside to dry. Now it's time to add some embellishments that I made previously using ColourArte's Radiant Gel's 3D paint and silicone molds. I have a short video tutorial where I show you how to make these. You can click on the link above to go straight to that video. Sometimes you may need to clean up the edges on your molded embellishments, and it is very easy to fix. Just snip off any rough edges or pieces sticking out with scissors. I'm thinking about using these leaves and one flower. And as you can see, these are very, very flexible, which is going to work perfectly for this rounded ornament. So the first thing I'm going to do is color these leaves with black emerald primary elements mixed with a little bit of the polymer gloss medium. Now this color is a bit dark, but I think you'll see why I'm using this color in spite of its darkness. Because after I paint it, and I do want to get the edges because the edges will certainly be seen, I'm going to take a dry baby wipe or a paper towel before the paint dries, and I will be removing some of that color so that the gold will show through and show the detail again. Let me show you what I mean. Yes, I think that's going to look real good. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of the leaves and do the same process as before. And here they are, all finished. Don't they look vintage? So now I want to do the same thing with the molded flower, but with apple blossom primary elements and polymer medium. I will paint the entire flower, getting the paint down into the crevices before I take a baby wipe and remove the paint on the high spots. This will reveal that beautiful color beneath. So now I've got golden nugget primary elements, and I just want to add some additional highlights on these. And so again, I'm going to use my polymer medium. Find me a clean spot here. I don't need very much of this. I'm going to be doing a dry brushing of this technique, but I'm just going to be using my finger. And actually, let me try and get a little bit more. I think I'll go ahead and use my brush to mix it first. And it's a beautiful, beautiful color. And I'm thinking I just want to pick up a small amount and just kind of touch the surface of the flower. I just kind of want to bring that all the details out. And so you can see I'm just kind of touching it with that. You can use a brush. I guess I'm just being a little lazy. You know, whatever you feel you prefer. I just think this gives it a really pretty vintage look, and it does bring out the details, so isn't that pretty? And I'm thinking I might go ahead and give it a go on here. Just see what we can do here. Oh yeah, I like that. Yes, indeed, I do like that. All right. I find it easy to do this with my finger. Now you need something flat, so, oh yeah. I'll just go ahead and fast forward through this section where I repeat the same process for the remaining leaves. All right, I've got my ornament ready to accept my molded embellishments. And first I want to set them onto the ornament to check placement before I start adding the glue. Then once I have a good idea just about where to begin, I will use some glossy accents to adhere the leaves. I'm going to glue the two smaller leaves first to make sure I have enough room for them. Then I can work outwards with the longer leaves. Now I just want to check and make sure that they look pretty symmetrical and even. Yep, that looks pretty good. Okay, this seems to be holding pretty well. And what I wanted to do, because I'm going to be sitting this on top of these and having to sort of mold it around and over, there's going to be this gap here, and I think I needed a thicker glue. So I'm going to go to my Fast Grab Tacky Glue so that I can put kind of a large dollop in there. Fold over. I'm doing this a little gently because I really don't want, this huge blob of glue to come squeezing out. Even if it does, it will dry clear, but I don't really want it to be seen too much. I do, however, want it to grab, so I think that's going to be pretty good right there. And I will hold this for a few minutes until it seems to want to take it, and then I'll be able to walk away and let it finish drying. And so, all that's necessary now is to put the holder back in, and I will show you the finished photos after this is all dry. So I'll be right back. So here's a closer look at the finished piece. You may have noticed that I've added 2 more flowers to it. I just think it looked a little bare and I needed more. I used the same process to color them as before. The gel medium isn't quite dry yet, but should dry completely clear. Well, I hope you enjoyed my project today and that I have taken the fear out of acrylic pours with my dip, dab, and drag process. You can get a similar result with this process, and like I said, it is only paint. You can always add more until you like the results. If you enjoyed today's project video, please give me a thumbs up, and I hope you will consider subscribing to my channel so you won't miss any future tutorials. As always, thanks for watching, and always take time to play.